What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Welcome to day 357 of the 365-day graphic novel review challenge. Today, I want to talk to you about Earth 2, Volume 4, The Dark Age. This is written by Tom Taylor with art by Nicola Scott, Robson Roca, Trevor Scott, and Barry Kitson. This collects issues 17 through 20 of Earth 2 and Earth 2 Annual 2. I mentioned in one of my earlier reviews of this series that James Robinson, he was the writer at the beginning for roughly the first 19 or so issues, and then he kind of abruptly left the series. He had some kind of disagreement with the higher-ups. I had heard that the people at DC, they wanted to do a second Earth 2 series, and they wanted to get someone else who was not James Robinson to write it, and apparently James Robinson was a little upset because he felt like he had put in a lot of time and effort into this world and creating all these characters, or new versions of these characters, and world building here, and he felt like he should be the one kind of in control of Earth 2, and so he left. I don't know if that's true because, like I mentioned, it was a little while before we got a second Earth 2 series. The next one that we got was actually the World's End event, which was like 20-something issues long. And so by that point, Tom Taylor was no longer even writing the book. He was gone before the World's End event even started. So I don't know if that's the actual reason why James Robinson left the series. But here we have Tom Taylor, and he is doing the best that he can in trying to take the characters and the story ideas that James Robinson was developing and take them in the direction, or at least take them in an organic direction that seems natural, while also doing his own thing and doing the thing that he wants to do with this series. And I still like this series. I really like this volume. I like what Tom Taylor is doing here, but it is a little bit obvious whenever you read all these books, especially when you're reading them so close together like I've been doing here recently. It's pretty obvious that Tom Taylor was interested in doing something very different than what James Robinson was interested in doing. James Robinson was going at a very slow pace, as I mentioned in my reviews for the first 3 volumes. I didn't mind because I was interested in seeing where he was going. I liked what he was doing, so even though he was going very slow, I was wanting to see where he was going. Sometimes somebody could go very slow, but if I don't like what they're doing, then I don't want to see where they're going. I liked what James Robinson was doing with this series. Tom Taylor is not going at that slow of a pace. He is kicking things up a notch. The stakes feel considerably higher here. The one thing that might be a problem for some people, might be a deal breaker, it is a little bit of a problem for me, is that this feels like it's discarding the characters that James Robinson was focusing on in the first 3 volumes. Green Lantern is not even here at all in this book. The Flash is there just a little bit at the very beginning, and then he kind of gets taken off the board. Hot Girl is there a little bit. Dr. Fate, he's there, but he kind of becomes a rambling madman throughout this book. So this, in a way, is kind of like if you were watching Scrubs. Let's say you were watching the TV show Scrubs Season 1, and you have your main characters, JD, Turk, Carla, Elliot, and then Season 2 rolls around, and you don't see any of those guys, and suddenly we're focusing on, some other doctor, and that's not the same thing as what Scrubs actually did, where in Season 9 we're focusing on a new group of characters. It would be like if the series was still in its infancy, and we started off with a group of main characters, and then suddenly we don't see those main characters at all. That's what this feels like here, where all of our main characters that we were focusing on in the first 3 volumes kind of are ignored in this volume, and instead we're focusing on some of the other characters. We still get to see Amara Khan, who is the commander of the World Army. He's here a little bit in this book. We get to see Major Sato. She was there kind of in the background in some of the earlier volumes. We get to see Red Arrow, who was introduced in, I want to say, Volume 2. He's there a little bit here, but we get to see a whole lot more with Batman, this world's version of Batman. And I'll go ahead and talk about that right now. So spoilers on the identity of Batman from Earth 2. So it ends up being Thomas Wayne. And that was something when I first heard about it, I thought, come on guys, you just did that in Flashpoint. Do we have to do Thomas Wayne again? I was really hoping it would be an adult version of Damian Wayne, because the pre-crisis Earth 2, it was a world that was older than the main DC Universe Earth. So characters on Earth 2 were a good 15 to 20 years older than the characters on Earth 1. So I thought, okay, if Damian Wayne is 8 or 9 on our world, then that would mean on Earth 2 he would be in his mid to late 20s. So he could be the Batman that we've been seeing lurking around in earlier issues. No, it ends up being Thomas Wayne, and ultimately I like the direction that they go here. I like the origin for this Thomas Wayne. I like what they do with him, but I do wish that they had done something different since we just had Thomas Wayne as Batman in Flashpoint. Now, I haven't read Flashpoint, but it seems a little redundant here when we just did that not that long before the series started, like just a year or two before Earth 2 started. But anyway, we focus a whole lot on this version of Batman. We are also introduced to a new version of Jimmy Olsen. We get a new Kryptonian introduced here. We have this new version of the Red Tornado, which incidentally, we saw the Red Tornado in Volume 3. The Red Tornado was introduced in a scene where Fury was fighting Mr. Miracle, and Barda, she went to go look for the Batman. That was the last that we saw of any of those characters. In this volume, we don't get to see Mr. Miracle, we don't get to see Barda, we don't get to see Fury. We do get to see the Red Tornado, and she is being programmed with the memories and the personality of Lois Lane. So I don't really understand what happened to Mr. Miracle, what happened to Barda and Fury. Some of those characters will show up in later volumes, but it's inconsistent with what we last saw of them in this series. And I feel like it almost seems like Tom Taylor wasn't paying attention to everything that was going on here when he took over. There's a lot of stuff here that it feels like he was paying attention to, but there's a few balls that get dropped when the series gets passed from James Robinson to Tom Taylor. Also, I guess I could talk about the spoilers from Volume 3. The other horseman, or not horseman, the lackey of Steppenwolf that was a mystery in Volume 3 and was revealed in Volume 3, but I didn't talk about it because it was a spoiler. It is Superman, or at least it's the Earth 2 version of Superman. And he is kind of the big bad of this volume, and will be a pretty big threat in later issues as well. And I like it. This is part of what happens when the stakes are raised in this series. This really does feel like everyone on the planet is in hiding. It feels a lot like Days of Future Past. It reminds me of how all the characters that you know are either dead or on the run, and that's part of what I really like about this book. This series is not running as slow as it was, and that's something that I kind of like. Now that I have been introduced to these characters over the course of 3 volumes, I like that we finally get to see them start doing stuff. I do wish that this volume focused a little bit more on Green Lantern, Flash, Dr. Fate, and Hawkgirl, since those were our principal characters. I don't even think that we see the Atom at all in this volume, and he was another kind of sort of secondary character. But this book does introduce some other characters that it seems like Tom Taylor is more interested in. I wish that he could have found a way to balance introducing these characters that he wanted to tell stories about while not getting rid of the characters that this series was about. Overall, I do like this volume, but it is a little bit jarring whenever we're going from the way that this series was and the characters that this series focuses on to the way that the series is with this volume and the new characters that this series focuses on. So those are my thoughts on Earth 2 Volume 4, The Dark Age. I still liked it, but it is a little bit disappointing going from the first 3 volumes to this volume. So those are my thoughts on this book. I hope that you guys liked this review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back tomorrow with a different video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.